Russians did was when they came down with the Armenian rebels, they came down into eastern Anatolia, all of the Muslims that were in their way had to flee or die. I mean, I stress this, when people talk about deportation, what demographers talk about, the study of population, what we talk about is not using words like deportation. We talk about forced migration. Right? If I come up to you and I hold a gun to your head and I say, it's time you were leaving, time to go, that's forced deportation. Right? It's forced migration. It's deportation. If I make it very organized, as the Ottomans tried to do and failed a lot of times, but if I make it very organized, you know, this kind of surgun, or if I, like the Russians did, I come along and I shoot you, and I shoot you, and I shoot you, and then the rest of you see it and you run. Which is better? The Ottoman way is better. It's better to try to be organized. The Russians just shot a lot of people so that everyone else was afraid and they ran away. That is also deportation, but it's a worse kind of deportation. It's a forced migration. So yes, indeed, the Russians did do that. They did that in a century, and they were much, much, much worse than the Ottomans ever were in what they did about this.
I sit on this table. I have the privilege of asking my own question. Well, some years ago, some 15 years ago, 67 American academicians signed a declaration. 69. Yes, one of you were one of them, and to the Senate. But this declaration is now forgotten. This year, 125 Turkish academicians signed the declaration, including your declaration in this one, and they tried to publish it in New York Times. But New York Times plainly refused. How can we persuade these big newspapers to be more impartial?
It's hard. I did not know that this had even happened. This is the first I had heard about it. How can you convince the big newspapers? It surprises me because usually the big newspapers believe that they need to consider only how much money they're paid to accept these things. So it's hard for me to understand. I can't give you. I'm so surprised that the New York Times would not accept it that it's hard for me to come up with an answer. I would think that they would have. Do you remember the reason that they gave?
I just got an email from the Turkish American Association stating that they didn't accept that.
Well, in this case, it's very difficult to say. You obviously have to try the papers that will accept your ads. I don't think that ads are the primary. You see, everyone knows that you pay for ads. I would, myself, knowing how much an ad, I believe it, quarter page in the New York Times costs $30,000. Is that about right? I believe it's about that much money. $30,000 will produce a teacher's manual. Right? $30,000 will allow you to have something to give the teachers all over America. Which is better? As far as I'm concerned, spend the money on the teachers, spend the money on the students. So while I would hope that the New York Times would change its mind, I'm surprised that they didn't, because they usually feel they should do that sort of thing. My advice would be, if you wish to have my advice would be spend the money where it counts the most. Spend the money on the minds of children. The minds of children are going to live forever. The New York Times, who's going to remember it tomorrow? So that's what I would say. And notice I cleverly did not answer the question. Yes.
Next question is from Akif Sadıkova, Anahit Sadıkova. It's in Turkish. I'm going to read it very slowly to you. Senelerce Rus işgali altında yaşamak isteyen fakat 500 sene Osmanlı'da hoşgörüyle yaşayan Ermenilerin bugünkü kazançları ne olmuştur? Bugün Ermenistan'da yaşayan halkın acı durumu bu ırkçı iddiaların sonucu değil mi? Ve bugün benim her iki millete mensup olan ailemin neler çektiğinden, üç memleket değişmemizden, bütün bu işleri karıştıranların haberi var mı?
You better give it to me a little bit. You want to know whether I have news about the change of
Armenia. It's a desperate situation in Armenia. Are they aware of the fact that we have been, sharing this misery for such a long time?
Well, I hope that I'm aware of it. I know about the massacres of Azeris, especially. There also are problems in Georgia, but I don't know too much some idea. Of course, I'm a historian, and so we deal with things that are long gone. But as a historian, I can say that these things are actually a continuity of what happened long ago. That if you look at what today is Armenia, what today is the Armenian Republic, and if you go back to 1820, I realize that's a long time, but if you go back to 1820, at that time, the majority of people in Yerevan province, the Armenian Republic, majority of people were Turks, not Armenians. This is the way that it was. At that time, in the war of 1828 to 1829, the Russians came in, the Russians came in, and I stress, I believe that there is at least one Russian representative here, and I'm not talking about the government of today. Right? I don't believe that this is something that happened a long time ago, you'll understand. But the Russians came down, the Tsar's army, and they evicted Turks who lived there, and they sponsored a program of bringing Armenians into the area. Armenians were scattered all over the place. Armenians were scattered. There were small communities of Armenians, large communities in many areas. The Russians used techniques that were very effective. They gave tax relief, but the main thing they had was they had all this free land because they had thrown the Muslims off. So now they had empty houses, free farms, so they could say, welcome, and the Armenians came into there. That's when Armenia got a majority of Armenians. It may have had that centuries before, but I can't speak for sure about that. But I do know that before that time, there were not. And I stress that this is the work of an Armenian historian who has proved these points. A man named George Bernucci. He did not say it to make me happy, but he hopefully said it because it was true. That being the case, there were some areas in which there were still Turks who lived, and Kurds, some Kurds, who lived in what today is the Armenian Republic. These are especially areas around the sides, around the borders,